So my name is Kerry Akehurst. I'm a temporary DI within the domestic abuse team in Surrey Police, based at Reigate. So I joined as a PCSO in 2003. I really always wanted to be a police officer since a young age. I think watching the bill helped with that. But I always just wanted to help people and be there for them and get criminals off the street. I know it's really cliche, but that's what I wanted to do. But I didn't know whether I really wanted to do it. So when the PCSO opportunity came up, I went for that. And in 2005, I joined up as a PC and went into training school. So I've been in the job now for just over 20 years. And I've gone through mainly investigation route with a little bit of time on the front line on that response. It's massively changed since I joined. 1 minute back in 2005, we had cops all over the place in all these different little police stations, and now there really isn't as many as there used to be. You haven't got that Bobby on the beat anymore, and you haven't got these little police stations everywhere. You've got a central place where everybody goes to, and then they farm out from there. And from a criminal perspective, it's massively changed, because you would have a shoplifting, and now you've got cybercrime, frauds, multi-million pounds worth. So I think digitally and physically everything has changed. But when I went to a murder-suicide last year, where a father had taken 3 children, I was with the mother who was left surviving. She was saying goodbye to her children, who were obviously dead, and she was reading them bedtime stories. And at that point I did think to myself, am I getting paid enough to do this? It's really difficult, because I have worked on the response side of things, but they deal with a lot more of the frontline initial things than I do. I've had experience of it recently. About 3 years ago, I was down there for a couple of years, but every day they're putting their lives on the line. Firearms officers are also doing the same. And they've just been abused. They're being video recorded. Everything is just, they're being assaulted. It's not nice. It's not nice to see nor hear. From my perspective, being in the investigation side, there's so much paperwork. It's not physical paperwork anymore, it's all on the computer, but there's so much that you have to do in order to get that charge and get that person into court. From everyone, I've always said to people, from the moment that somebody gets arrested and charged is where the real work starts from my department's point of view. The amount of forms that have to be filled out for a case file is unbelievable. And the public won't know that nor see that. I obviously see it on a daily basis with my team, having to fill out all these forms and get it to a point, and then it's reviewed, and then it comes back, you haven't quite done this, you haven't quite done that, so they have to do it again. Then it goes back, and then it's, oh, hang on, no, you missed this again. So you can see them pulling their hair out whilst doing their files, which again the public wouldn't see. And the stress and pressure that puts on them to get that one done, because they want to get that charge, they want to get it through to court, and everything else on their workload then will just be put to one side, which obviously then we've got victims and witnesses who aren't very happy because we're not contacting them a lot, but we're trying. It's just we're not being able to get there because of all the paperwork that has to be done for other jobs. I've dealt with mental health throughout my career. I've had spouts of it where I've ended up on medication as a result. I've not taken any time out, but that was my choice. So for me, I know when I'm going down a route of my mental health is becoming poor, and I know the signs for me. The younger officers, I can see the signs, I can see things happening just because I've been through it, and everybody deals with it differently, but I like to think I'm quite good at recognising it, so I can try and get in there and help before it turns into something. But the stress and pressure is just unbelievable. Most people will go home of an evening and just sit there and cry, or turn to other things like alcohol, which isn't great. But then you have to recognise those problems as well and try and help as much as you can, so that they can just do their jobs and come to work every day. When you're down, you're more susceptible to picking like a cold or a flu or a thrown up bug or something up. When it comes to relationships, one minute you want them there, next minute you're telling them to go away. You just want that alone time, but you don't want to be alone. It's really difficult to explain. I know I've been through that. Go away, leave me alone. Actually, no, I want you here because I'm feeling a bit lonely now, but I don't want you here. So everyone will go through that in their own way, but that'll be the relationships. That's why you form better relationships with your colleagues, because they seem to understand it. So if you've got family and friends and a relationship outside of the police, it's a bit more difficult for them to understand why you're doing that, and they'll just look at you and think like you're a bit weird. But that's just your coping mechanism of how to deal with it. And I was spoken to by my good sergeant at the time. He said to me, "Don't leave, you are good at your job. Just because you're struggling now doesn't mean that it's going to carry on forever." I did listen to him, and I'm still here. But at the point when I was going through that, I was literally eating Tesco's value baked beans. They're more expensive now than when I was obviously eating them, but it was literally breakfast, lunch and dinner was beans on toast because I couldn't afford to do anything else. They can't afford to live, let alone afford to save for a mortgage, move out of parents' homes, have some independence and live on their own. The bills are extortionate. They just don't have the money to save to get a mortgage, because you're looking at least a 10 to 15% deposit these days. Renting is just through the roof. You're looking at about 1,500 to £2,000 for a one-bed flat, which is just extortionate with bills on top, and they don't get paid that, so they can't afford it. It needs to change. What they go through, especially those on response, and I think most now do that stint on response initially, not for what they get put through on a daily basis either. All the name calling and everything else and the assaults, it's not worth it. I do love my job. I have to say I do love my job, and I do love locking people up and seeing that result. But if I was giving advice to a younger person now, I'd tell them to seriously think about the fact that it will affect their mental health, the stresses and strains, and I'd be really honest with them. But I would also encourage them to join, because I think we need more police officers. We need people to go through the training school and come out the other side and enjoy their careers, but the money isn't very good, and in the private sector there is more, and there's more out there and potentially more opportunities for them. So I would probably remain very neutral, and I'd be very balanced, but I would 100% try to get them to join, but I'd have to explain that actually you might not be able to live properly. When you're at work, you're trying to think about just work, but you can't, because you've got all of this. Oh, I've got to pay the gas, or I've got to pay the water, or I've got to do that food shop, how am I going to afford it? Going through your head at the same time as you're trying to deal with somebody assaulting somebody, or a domestic situation, or a child protection situation. So your head's not always in the job. So sometimes, as a result of thinking about everything else and all the stresses that are in your life, you might miss things initially at the location that you're at and make mistakes. I just think the stresses and pressures on those and younger in service is just unbelievable. I've known that one of my team members ended the relationship with her partner and was going to be moving onto a new role, but as a result of ending that relationship, hasn't taken that new role, because actually the role that she was in with me gives her more money, so she couldn't go to that other role. So that's a bit of a different way around of it, but she really wanted that other role, police staff member, because it was less stress, less pressure, and a bit of an easier life in work. But due to the pay being so low, she couldn't. But with officers, I see them struggling, and it's just really difficult, because you want to say to them, here, have some money, but I can't afford to do that. I try and give them some treats where I can, just like a coffee from McDonald's or something, or a bit of cake, but they can't afford to live, let alone go out and enjoy their lives. Everyone's doing overtime in order to be able to live, and I, as a DI, I can't authorise that overtime in order for people to be able to live, because I've got the budget and the constraints that I have to work to. And recently I've been given my budget for overtime for the year, and I've spent a third in 1 month because it was overtime that needed to happen. Not just because I want to give it to somebody so they can live, it was in order to do their job and get the right result at the end of it. But I know officers are, in my department especially, are seeking overtime in other departments to get that money so that they can live, which then causes the issue of crash and burn. They're working so many hours in order to be able to live that they then will end up being poorly as a result of it, which isn't good. I think there's also the added issue of what they're seeing on a daily basis. They just say, I don't get paid enough for this, why should I come to work and deal with that on a daily basis when I can go into the private sector and earn twice as much? The pay needs to increase. We need to attract people to the job, and we're not doing that at the moment, especially with all the issues with mental health. People see that from the public point of view as well as within the police service, especially those staff members that might think about becoming a police officer. They see what they go through and they think, no, I'm not doing that. Look at what they're getting paid for it. Detectives, really hard to recruit and retain. We're really struggling to get anyone to come on board really to do that role, because they know that workloads are really, really high and the stresses and strains that come with that. Conditions-wise, we don't seem to be getting a lot of recognition at the moment, and I've always gone with, if people are happy, they'll work. So I promote reward and recognition within my team on a daily basis. They are massively stressed. They're up to their eyes in work, but they're still doing the job because I give that reward and recognition. So I think pay needs to increase, and there needs to be some form of reward, recognition and support for mental health. It's a difficult one because I love the job still, but I would be encouraging them to join. I would tell them that the financial side of things isn't great, so they'd need to have some form of backup plan or a plan in place, or be able to borrow some money from their parents or family members to assist in them being able to live on their own, because that's something that would be really difficult for them to do. And I wouldn't want somebody to get into horrendous amounts of debt in order to do the job. So I'd be really honest about the pay side of things. It's not great, but the rewards you get from doing the job sometimes outweigh that. So it's a balancing act. None of my friends have to rely on a second income. They're all in private sector from outside of the job. Yeah, they're paid well. I don't think anyone should be working more than they already are in order to make ends meet. I did it when I was younger. I was working 2 jobs to make ends meet, but it was tough, really tough, and I wouldn't recommend that for anyone, and I don't think anyone should be in this day and age having to work 2 jobs in order to survive.